Okay, real talk. I want you to picture something for a second. You're sitting at your kitchen table, maybe it's a Sunday night, you've got a cup of coffee going cold next to you, and you're staring at your bank app. And there it is, your savings account. $3,000. Maybe 5. Maybe even 10. And you feel good. You feel responsible. You feel like, yeah, I'm doing the right thing. I'm being smart with my money. I'm not like those people blowing cash on nonsense. You put a little bit away every month. You don't touch it. And it just sits there. Growing slowly, but growing. And here's the thing, I don't want to take that feeling away from you. That discipline, that restraint, that's genuinely rare. Most people can't do what you're doing. But I need to tell you something that nobody, and I mean almost nobody, is sitting you down to explain. And it's this. That money you're so proud of saving? It is losing value. Right now. Today. While you sleep. While you work. While you feel responsible. It is quietly, invisibly, getting poorer. And the bank, the same bank sending you congrats on your savings milestone, notifications, they know it. They just aren't telling you. This is the inflation trap. And it has been robbing everyday, hard-working, disciplined people for decades. So today, we're blowing the lid off it. We're going to talk about what inflation actually is, why your savings account is basically a slow leak in your financial tire, and, most importantly, what you can actually do about it. Because there is a way out. And it's not complicated. You just have to know where to look. Alright, let's get into it. So first, let me ask you something. When you hear the word inflation, what comes to mind? Probably something vague, right? Politicians arguing on TV, gas prices going up, your grocery bill being weirdly higher than it was last year even though you bought the same stuff. But here's what inflation actually is, in plain English. Inflation is the rate at which the purchasing power of your money decreases over time. That's it. That's the whole thing. It means that $1 today will buy you less stuff next year than it does right now. And this isn't some abstract economic theory. This is happening in your wallet, in your bank account, in your retirement savings, right now. Here's a number that should make you sit up a little straighter. The average inflation rate in the United States over the last 100 years has been around 3.3% per year. That's the long-run average. Now, we've seen it spike way higher. In 2022, it hit over 9%. That was the highest it had been in 40 years. But even in normal times, you're looking at 2 to 4% per year, every single year, grinding away at the value of your dollars. Now think about your savings account. What's your bank paying you right now in interest? Maybe 0.5%? If you're lucky, maybe 1%? The national average interest rate on a standard savings account, according to the FDIC, has hovered around 0.45% to 0.6% for years. Some of the big traditional banks, we're talking the ones with branches on every corner, are still paying people 0.01%. Do you understand what that means? If inflation is running at 3% and your savings account is paying you 0.5%, you are losing 2.5% of your purchasing power every single year. The bank is technically giving you money, but in real terms, in terms of what that money can actually buy, you are getting poorer. Let me put some real numbers on this so it actually hits. Say you've got $10,000 sitting in a savings account. You're proud of it. You worked hard for it. And let's say your bank is paying you a very generous, for a traditional bank, 0.5% interest. After 1 year, you've got $10,050. Cool. $50. Thanks, bank. But if inflation was 3% that year, the purchasing power of your original $10,000 has effectively dropped to about $9,700 in real terms. So your account says $10,050, but what that money can actually buy in the real world is equivalent to about $9,751 compared to what it could buy a year ago. You made $50 and lost $250 in real value. The numbers went up. Your wealth went down. That's the trap. That's the thing nobody explains clearly enough. Because the number in your bank account never goes down. It just quietly becomes worth less. And that's so much more sinister than just losing money outright, because you don't feel it happening. There's no alarm, no notification, no little sad face emoji from your bank app. It just erodes. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Okay, but savings accounts are safe. At least I'm not losing money like people who invest and watch the stock market crash. And look, I hear you. I really do. That fear is legitimate. We've all seen headlines about people losing their entire retirement in a market crash. We all know someone who made a bad investment and lost money. That fear is real and it makes sense. But here's what people get wrong about risk. They think risk only means could I lose money. And yeah, that's one kind of risk. But there's another kind of risk that nobody talks about enough, and that's the risk of your money losing value while it just sits there doing nothing. Think about it like this. Imagine you've got a bucket of water. And you're keeping it safe. You've got it in a cool, dark place. Nobody can steal it. It's perfectly secure. But the bucket has a tiny hole in the bottom. And every single day, just a little bit of water drips out. Not enough to notice on any given day. But a year goes by, 5 years go by, and now you've got maybe half the water you started with. That's your savings account. The bucket isn't getting stolen. You're doing everything right. But the hole is inflation. And it never stops dripping. Now here's where it gets even more uncomfortable. Because I want to talk about something called opportunity cost. And this one really hurts when you understand it. Opportunity cost is the cost of what you didn't do with your money. It's not just that your savings account is losing value. It's that every single dollar sitting in that account is a dollar that isn't working for you somewhere else. Every dollar has a job it could be doing, and instead, you've got it sitting on a park bench doing absolutely nothing while other people's dollars are out there building wealth. Let me show you the math that changes everything. Let's go back to that $10,000. 2 scenarios. In scenario 1, you put it in a traditional savings account at 0.5% interest and leave it for 30 years. You know what you end up with? About $11,614. 30 years. And you barely cleared $1,600 in gains. After inflation, that money has less purchasing power than when you started. Now scenario 2. You invest that same $10,000 in a simple, boring index fund that tracks the S&P 500. The S&P 500, which is basically a basket of America's 500 biggest companies, has returned an average of about 10% per year historically, or roughly 7% when you adjust for inflation. So let's use 7% to be conservative. After 30 years at 7%, you've got over $76,000. Same money, same 30 years. One decision. The difference is $64,000. That's not luck. That's not some get-rich-quick scheme. That's math. Compound interest is literally Albert Einstein's eighth wonder of the world, and you either use it or it's used against you. So here's where I have to be honest with you for a second, because I don't want to just scare you and leave you there. That's not the point. I'm not saying savings accounts are evil. I'm not saying you should go dump every dollar you have into the stock market tomorrow. That's not what this is. A savings account absolutely has a purpose. Your emergency fund, 3 to 6 months of living expenses, should absolutely be in a liquid, accessible savings account. That money needs to be there when your car breaks down or you lose your job. Don't touch that. Leave it. But that is the only money that belongs in a standard savings account. The rest of it? It needs to be put to work. And here's what I want you to understand. The people who are actually building wealth, the people who seem to be ahead, they're not doing anything magical or secret. They're just not letting their money die in a low-interest account. They understand one fundamental principle. Money that isn't growing is shrinking. There is no neutral. There is no safe and staying the same. You're either moving forward or you're falling behind. And the sad thing, the thing that genuinely frustrates me, is that this isn't taught in schools. You learn about the American Revolution. You memorize the periodic table. But nobody sits you down in 10th grade and says, hey, here's what happens to your money if you just leave it in a savings account for 30 years. Nobody explains compound interest in a way that makes you feel it in your gut. Nobody shows you the gap between the person who invested and the person who saved, and says, look, this is the difference. This is what it costs to not know this stuff. So if you're feeling a little blindsided right now, that's not your fault. You were never given this information. But now you have it. And what you do with it from here, that part is on you. So let's talk about what to actually do. Because I don't believe in just pointing out problems without giving you a real path forward. Here's how you start to escape the inflation trap. The first thing, and this sounds almost too simple, is to move your savings to a high-yield savings account. Not a regular savings account. These are typically offered by online banks, places like Marcus by Goldman Sachs, Ally Bank, or SoFi, and right now, many of them are paying between 4% and 5% APY. That's not a typo. While your big traditional bank is paying you 0.01% on your savings, these online banks are paying 4 to 5%. Same FDIC insurance, same protection, just 10 times the return. For your emergency fund especially, this is a no-brainer. There is genuinely no reason to keep your emergency fund in an account paying you nothing when you could have it sitting in a high-yield account, still fully accessible, still protected, but actually keeping pace with inflation. That's step 1. Step 2 is understanding what a retirement account actually is, and using it. I can't tell you how many people think a 401k or an IRA is some kind of investment product when it's actually just a container. A tax-advantaged container that you put investments inside. Your 401k isn't an investment. It's a bucket, and what matters is what you put in the bucket. If your employer offers a 401k with a match, meaning they contribute money to your retirement account based on how much you put in, and you are not maxing out that match, you are leaving free money on the table. That is not a metaphor. Your employer is literally offering to give you money and you're saying no. The average employer match in America is about 4.7% of your salary. If you make $50,000 a year and your employer matches up to 4%, that's $2,000 a year in free money. Step 3, and this is the one that actually builds long-term wealth, is investing in index funds. I know investing sounds intimidating. I know it sounds like something for people with finance degrees and Bloomberg terminals. But an index fund is literally just buying a tiny piece of hundreds or thousands of companies all at once. When you invest in an S&P 500 index fund, you own a sliver of Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and about 496 other companies. You're not betting on one horse. You're betting on the entire race. And the data on this is overwhelming. Over any 15-year period in the history of the S&P 500, the market has never failed to be higher than where it started. Never. Even accounting for crashes. Even accounting for recessions. Even accounting for 2008 and 2020 and every other moment of financial panic that felt like the world was ending. Over the long run, the market goes up. Warren Buffett, arguably the greatest investor who has ever lived, has said repeatedly that for most ordinary people, regularly investing in a low-cost S&P 500 index fund over time will outperform almost anything else they could do with their money. That's not me saying it. That's Warren Buffett. You don't need to pick stocks. You don't need to watch CNBC. You don't need to know what APE ratio is. You just need to start. Consistently. Regularly. And let time do the heavy lifting. Now, I want to address something before we wrap up. Because inevitably whenever I talk about this stuff, somebody in the comments says, but what if the market crashes? What if I lose everything? And here's my honest answer. Yes, the market will crash. It absolutely will. Multiple times in your investing lifetime, you will watch your portfolio drop 20, 30, 40% on paper. That will happen. I'm not going to lie to you. But here's what people who stay out of the market never understand. A crash is only a loss if you sell. If you don't sell, if you stay in, if you keep investing even when things look bad, you don't lose anything. The market has recovered from every single crash in its history. Every one. And people who stayed invested didn't just recover. They came out richer, because they kept buying shares at lower prices during the crash and then rode the recovery back up. The people who got destroyed in 2008 weren't the people who invested. They were the people who panicked and sold at the bottom. They locked in their losses. The people who held on, or better yet, kept buying, looked like geniuses 5 years later. Time in the market beats timing the market every single time. Look, I want to leave you with this. 100 years ago, keeping cash under your mattress was actually somewhat viable. Inflation was lower, the economy was different, and investment options for regular people were basically non-existent. But we're not living in that world anymore. We're living in a world where inflation is a permanent feature of the economy, where the dollar loses purchasing power every single year by design. The Federal Reserve literally targets 2% inflation as a policy goal, and where the tools to protect yourself and actually build wealth are more accessible than they have ever been in human history. You can open an investment account on your phone in 15 minutes. You can start investing with as little as $1. The barriers that used to keep ordinary people out of wealth building are almost completely gone. And that means the only thing standing between you and a future where your money is working as hard as you do, is knowing this stuff. And doing something about it. The people who are going to be financially free in 20 years are not smarter than you. They don't make more money than you, not necessarily. They just understood this one thing earlier. saving money in a low-interest account is not a strategy. It is a slow surrender to inflation. And they decided to stop surrendering. So here's what I want you to do. Not tomorrow. Today. 3 things. 1. If you don't have a high-yield savings account, open one. It takes 10 minutes. 2. If your employer offers a 401k match and you're not getting the full match, increase your contributions today. Don't leave that free money sitting there. 3. If you haven't started investing yet, open a brokerage account or a Roth IRA and put your first dollar into a simple S&P 500 index fund. Just $1. Just to start. Because once you start, the hardest part is over. Your future self is going to look back on the moment you understood this and made a different choice. And they're going to be grateful. Not because you got lucky. Not because you found some secret. But because you learned how money actually works, and you decided to stop letting it quietly die in an account that was never designed to make you wealthy. That's the move. Now go make it.